say, kids, what time is that?
Your turn to play bad cop?
Nah. Good cop and bad cop left for the day. I'm a different kind of cop.
And with that, those words changed basic cable TV as we knew it forever. On March 12th, 2002, the gritty cop drama The Shield made its premiere to record audience on the FX network. Before we get into the video, though, I want to remind you that if you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. It only helps us grow, and we can create more content as we get larger. And share it out, and give us a thumbs up if you like the video. Give us a thumbs down if you don't. But thank you for watching regardless. And with that, let's get into talking about the 20th anniversary of one of my favorite shows, and I think categorically the best show I've ever seen, The Shield. Now, I'm a guy, I don't like cop shows, generally. I just don't. I know NYPD Blue, the Stephen Bochco stuff was edgy and groundbreaking, but I just never really got into cop shows, or like hospital shows for that matter. I never really wanted to watch ER or anything like that either. But a friend of mine kept bothering me back in 2002 to sit down and watch the pilot episode of this cop show, this edgy cop show called The Shield. I really had no interest, but I kept putting him off and putting him off and putting him off. Finally, he showed me the pilot and the second episode, and I didn't want to admit it, but I was enthralled. I kind of just blew it off and said, well, yeah, I'd like to watch some more, just because I would just want to see where this goes, but I don't really like it all that much. Oh, no, I loved it and was hooked from that day forward. So we have to go back in time, because I think a lot of people, right now you can catch The Shield streaming on Hulu, and I think a lot of people might look at it and say, big deal. It looks like everything else out right now. And that's true. But you have to consider back at the time in 2001 when this show came out, nothing looked like that. In 2001, I mean, the FX network was this little fledgling Fox spin-off cable network that just ran reruns of things like The X-Files and Married with Children, stuff that was on Fox network. And then it also had like 20th Century Fox-produced shows like MASH, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Ally McBeal, NYPD Blue, so on and so forth. They would supplement that with the occasional Major League Baseball game or a NASCAR race. And they had two original series on the air at the time. One was Howard Stern's Son of the Beach, a comedy show starring Timothy Stack. He was kind of ripping on Baywatch. And The X Show, which was a late-night talk show that was aimed at the male demographic. So that same year, there was an upstart television staff writer named Sean Ryan, who was a staff writer for Nash Bridges and Angel and hadn't written a whole lot, had written a television pilot known as The Barn. And he was trying to shop it around, wasn't getting much success. The Barn was a gritty police drama that was based on a real-world incident in the Rampart Division of the South Central District of Los Angeles. So the Rampart Scandal was something that happened in the Rampart Division of Los Angeles. There was a special crimes unit called the Crash Unit that was put together in 1979. It was called CRASH, is an acronym for Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums. And in 1998, one of the officers, Brian Hewitt, was fired for covering up a beating and an asphyxiation of suspect Ismael Jimenez, who he apparently strangled in an interrogation room. And later the same year, another crash officer, Rafael Perez, was arrested for stealing 6 pounds of cocaine. He got himself a mistrial and then continued to reportedly steal more cocaine. And in 1999, testified against fellow officers in exchange for partial immunity. In May of 2001, and I'm going to put this article in the show notes if you want to read this article, the Rampart investigation had implicated a total of 58 officers in trials. 12 were suspended, 7 resigned, and 5 were terminated for beatings, planting evidence, falsifying reports, and unprovoked shootings. So the incident with Crash and Rampart, it was a mess. It was a mess. It's been fictionalized in several media as well, starting with the video game Grand Theft Auto San Andreas in 2004 with Samuel L. Jackson voicing Officer Frank Tenpenny and Chris Penn as Eddie Pulaski. And 2001, the Antoine Fuqua film Training Day with Denzel Washington as Alonzo, who was a stand-in for Crash Officer Rafael Perez. And then most recently, the 2011 film Rampart with Woody Harrelson as the renegade cop Dave Brown. But none of those resonated like Sean Ryan's The Barn, which would eventually become known as The Shield. So EW did a fantastic article this month talking about the 20th anniversary, and I will also put this in the show notes. So at that point in time, going back to 2001 and this fledgling cable network, FX, HBO and Showtime, to a bit of a lesser extent, like they owned the market on original high-end television. You know, like procedural shows on basic cable and the three major networks were not at the quality of HBO. And TV 20 years ago was like this ugly step-sibling of cinema. You know, television actors were trying to get into movies, and no movie actors were trying to get into TV. Basically, if you went to TV, it was a death sentence. Now it's been completely flip-flop. Now, you know, the big stars want a series vehicle because of the quality of television. And a lot of that came from what The Shield was able to do on basic cable. So at the time, FX president Peter Ligori acquired the script The Barn and immediately greenlit it. He says it was a miracle and it never should have happened. His script, meaning Sean Ryan's script, had been randomly thrown in a stack of other spec scripts. Every page was electric. When I called Sean to say we wanted to make the pilot, he thought we were joking. Sean Ryan goes on to say something like he really kind of resigned himself to the fact that pilot script might just be a great resume piece to get another job on a television show staff. And then I have the Shield Blu-ray set, and there's a cast reunion on there. And Michael Chiklis talks about how he met Kathy Ryan, Sean Ryan's wife, at the Gymboree Daycare Center, and back in that time. And Kathy was talking up her husband's script and gave Michael a copy. He read it and immediately called his agent and said, I need to do this. This is the best pilot script I've ever read. Of course, his agent said, you don't want to do this. That's FX. It's a cellar dweller. It'll ruin your career. But Chiklis was determined. He wanted the part of Detective Vic Mackey. He lost weight. He shaved his head. He got in shape. He landed the role and basically was the glue that held that series together. He got 2 Emmys. He won 2 Emmys and 3 Golden Globes. The rest of the cast, I know CCH Pounder won some awards. The whole show itself racked up dozens and dozens of primetime awards. It was truly trend-setting.
I'm responsible.
So the first shout-out for this show has to go to the staff of writers that Sean Ryan and executive producer Scott Brazil put together. Guys like Kurt Sutter, Glenn Mazzara, Scott Rosenbaum. Just clobbered it week after week after week. And Glenn Mazzara, one of the writers, said this about the pilot script. He said, when I read the script, I did say, quote, I can't imagine someone's going to let you get away with this ending, which, spoiler free, I'm not going to tell you what happens. So when he told me FX wants that ending, I was very surprised and happy. And this is his conversation with Sean Ryan, of course. And then FX president at the time, Peter Ligori, said, there was a moment when former FX executive Kevin Riley asked if we might want to shoot 2 endings just for safety. I said, quote, I don't want to do anything for safety. This is why we love it, unquote. And it's that kind of fearless attitude that I think is missing from a lot of entertainment today. I mean, if you just go back and watch this show, you can see it could never play now. We'll just leave it at that for the moment. It was beyond fearless. It was for basic cable, for any cable, for HBO even. Some of the things that were seen on this show were eye-popping and cringeworthy. So you got to love that. So the show itself. Let's talk about the show itself real quick before we go off the rails. So, the barn. The barn was set in the fictional Farmington district of L.A. The Shield's quote-unquote barn is it's an experimental police district in what they call Farmington in the show that operates out of a converted church it's like a church or some kind of one of those maybe Spanish conquistador monasteries or something. And it's in central southeast L.A. From what I can tell from watching the show and where they tend to be running around, it looks like the Silver Lake, Alvarado Corridor, the Rampart area, the Echo Park area, and places like that, Westlake. So I took this map and I kind of guessed where the fake Farmington district would be located. What was unique about the show is that it used real set pieces. They were shooting in gang-ridden and high-crime areas. Many of the extras they employed had rap sheets. Some of them were in gangs. Some of them were either on day passes from prison or on a release program. Or in one case, if you watch the Blu-ray extras, went straight back to jail as soon as they were done shooting. A lot of times, too, you'd see these weird cutaways of real things taking place when they went to shoot on location, like in Echo Park cutting down the trees, or people taking a yoga class, or they had the scene with a stakeout and someone's vomiting on the street. So they would just cut those things in if they caught it on camera. The show style was very cinema verite. It was all shot on 16mm film, all handheld guerrilla-style filmmaking. Ron Schmidt, the DP, and his crew just were amazingly masterful in getting all the action. Real fly-on-the-wall stuff. They'd sometimes shoot behind an object. They'd do quick push-ins and whip pans. The pace of the show was frenetic. A lot would happen in 46 minutes or 45 minutes. You'd forget it was one episode sometimes, so much went on. All the action was shot with high shutter and things like that. So it put you into the environment. And because they were using real people and real environments, the only set really is the barn itself. Gave it that real grounded feeling. Okay, to completely editorialize, I think the way the show was structured was that to give you a realistic sense of what goes on in a police precinct, we follow like 4 sets of people. So we'll meet some of the main characters here, and I'll quickly go over each one of them. So we'll start with the uniformed beat cops, or the unis as they're called. The first character is Julian Low. He's a rookie, played by Michael Jace. Julian's a trainee. He's new on the job, I think 6 months at the time, maybe a year. He's also harboring a very dark secret that I'm not going to give away, and he wrestles with it throughout the whole series. And Julian is a great character arc as the show goes on. He has lots of room to grow and expand the character. Unfortunately, the actor Michael Jace is currently serving a sentence in prison for murdering his wife. So that's a bummer, especially when you think of the character of Julian Low, who was a deeply religious, very sensitive character. Next up is his training officer, Danny Sopher. Danny's really smart. She's resourceful, tough. She's fearless beat cop, and she really is a tough mentor for Julian. She wants the best for him, so she really leans on him a lot. Catherine Dent just did a fantastic job with this role. So those are the 2 main uniformed cops we follow in the show. Next up, we have a couple of detectives that we follow. First up is Holland Dutch Wagenbach, or Dutch Boy, as some of them like to call him, played by Jay Carnes. Dutch has a reputation for being a little pompous, a little sanctimonious, and at the same time very socially awkward. He starts out as the butt of jokes in the barn, and there's a really good one right in the pilot we'll look at in a second. But he earns a lot of respect through the course of the first season when he cracks a really, really important serial killer case.
What are you all right about the best?
Took my ding-dongs.
Oh, come on, son. Fork over his ding-dongs.
How come he loves this asshole so much?
Look, let's go. We've got an interview. And I think I saw some Twinkies up in the break room.
It's not the same thing.
And it should be noted that Jay Carnes is a personal friend of Sean Ryan. Sean knew Jay before they even moved to L.A. to strike out in showbiz. So next up is the anchor, I think the anchor of the whole show, the anchor of the barn, Claudette Wims, played by CCH Pounder. Wims is probably the most veteran detective. I mean, they show some older detectives, but they're just background characters. She's probably the most seasoned of the main characters, is my point. She's really pragmatic. She's morally centered. She's clever, smart as a whip, super resourceful. She kind of acts like the barn mom, if you will, in the series. Personally speaking, for me, although every single one of these characters feels like a real person when you're watching the show, CC Pounder is by far the most real to me. She comes off as the most honest to God, real. Like, I feel like we're just watching her real life through the lens of the TV, through the lens of the camera. It's just, she's so good. She's so good and so natural. So next up is the leadership group that they follow, and it starts with Captain David Aceveda, played by Benito Martinez. Aceveda is politically ambitious. He's very self-serving. He's got his eyes on the prize, the eyes on the prize being mayor of Los Angeles. And his biggest rival in the barn is Detective Vic Mackey, who Aceveda is convinced is a crooked cop and feels that if he can bring Mackie to justice, it will ensure his climbing the political ladder and lots of political success, ending up in as the mayor.
I'd like your incident report first thing tomorrow morning.
Sure. Be a couple of days. I got something in the back burner.
It's not a request. Tomorrow morning.
You'll get my report in a couple of days, maybe a week. You don't like the timetable, you take it up with Gilroy.
I don't have to. In this building, I'm in charge.
Well, maybe in your own mind, amigo. But in the real world, I don't answer to you. Not today, not tomorrow, not even on Cinco de Mayo.
So we see the conflict there between him and Mackie, but which was great about the Shield and great about the writing is the anti-hero in the gray areas that they are able to completely traverse. Aceveda will sometimes throw those morals to the curb when he needs some self-serving justice.
What about attack dogs?
I hate dogs.
I need you.
Next up on the leadership team is Assistant Chief Ben Gilroy, played by veteran actor John Deal. The Farmington District Precinct is Gilroy's brainchild, and his career now rides on this experiment he's put forth. It rides on the hand-picked officers and detectives in the barn, and most notably the success of his new strike team, led by Detective Vic Mackey. And while we're on the subject of the strike team, they would be the fourth group of main characters we follow and the largest of the show. The strike team is clearly a stand-in for the crash unit from the real-life Rampart Scandal. It's a no-nonsense, plainclothes cop division designed to infiltrate gangs, kick down doors in crack houses and all over the place. Really highly dangerous job, and also got to be highly skilled, clearly. First up is Terry Crowley, played by Reed Diamond. Terry's the newest member of the strike team. He transferred to Farmington from robbery, the robbery division. Terry was also handpicked by Aceveda to collect some dirt on the strike team.
What are you getting out of this?
I just want a dirty cop off the street.
You want to be mayor someday? You better learn how to lie a hell of a lot better than that.
Next up is Ronnie Gardaki, played by David Reece Snell. Ronnie's like the tech guru and tactical expert for the strike team. He's really highly adept at hacking computers and whatnot, and password acquisitions and things like that. And it should be noted that David Reece Snell, also a personal friend of Sean Ryan, who they knew before they made the trek to L.A. So it was like all in the family to get this show on the air. Next up, a fan favorite, Curtis Lem Lemansky, or even Lemonhead as they call him at times, played by Kenny Johnson. Some of you might know Kenny now from his success on the SWAT television show, also by Sean Ryan. Lem's like the heart and soul of the strike team. the energetic, wide-eyed youth. His enthusiasm just fires people up, but he also is the one with the conscience, the one who's the one guy in the strike team who's kind of saying, "Hey, let's rein this back," or "I thought we were going to play this straight." When they kind of cross the line, you can see it really bothers Lem a lot. Next up, Shane Vendrell, played by the now very famous Walton Goggins. This was Walton Goggins' first role. Shane is Vic Mackey's best friend. He's his partner. He was his partner prior to joining the strike team. And Shane is about as loose cannon as loose cannons get. He's borderline out of control almost all the time. He's very mercurial. He's unpredictable and a complete narcissist.
Suck you what?
Hey,
What there?
Shane!
Suck that piece
Shane!
of shit. What are you doing?
Howdy, call the police! Out of your goddamn mind!
No!
We're trying to prevent the war, not start when you stupid.
God, the guy was being a pain in the ass.
You're being a huge pain in the ass lately. Should I take a piss on you?
And what I think is great about Shane is that he wants to be Vic Mackey. He's like Vic's little brother, and he thinks he's as smart as Vic, but he's not even close. Which brings us to the star of the show, Vic Mackey, played by Michael Chiklis. Vic's the leader of the strike team. He's highly effective at bringing in high arrest records, but he uses unorthodox, unethical, or downright cruel methods. He will strike deals with drug dealers to create safe passages for other drug dealers. A little bit of one-upsmanship while he gets a cut of the money. Just about as crooked as a crooked cop can get, and I don't want to go any further without completely ruining the series, but the penultimate episode in season 7, he sits down to confess all his crimes, and it's one of the most stunning moments in television history that I can think of. So, he's a father of 3. He loves his family, and he's a good family man. And this is where the staff of the Shield was so great at writing this character, because bad act after bad act didn't seem to matter. You still wanted to root for this guy. And we'll get into it in a little bit, but Forrest Whitaker joined the show in season 5, and Forrest Whitaker said he would go out in public and get screamed at, leave Vic Mackey alone, and even though Forrest Whitaker was playing the good guy. So it's as Vic's personal debt rises, so do his ambitions and his level of corruption and corner cutting.
Check it out.
He hit me, son. The police.
And real quick, we'll just go over a few of other characters that are added along the way, like Tina Hanlon, played by Paula Garces, who's another uniform trainee. Steve Billings, played by David Marciano, who's kind of a slacker, a bit of a lazy detective, who's almost the mirror opposite of the Bizarro universe Dutch. Tavon Garris, played by Brian White, who joins the strike team. And Corinne Mackie, played by Kathy Kalin Ryan, who is Sean Ryan's wife. They met before they moved to L.A., along with David Reece Snell and Jay Carnes, so you get the idea. They were a group of actors and a writer who wanted to make it big in showbiz, and all trekked out west. She ended up married to Sean in 1998. And I think what what Kathy brought to the role of Corinne was much what CeCe Pounder brought to Claudette Wims. She is about as real as it gets, and one of the most unsung actors on the show is Kathy Kalin Ryan.
Don't touch me! I can make you miserable too.
So this cast, though relatively unknown, were very real and natural, and I think, again, I said it earlier, makes it work. I think only CCH Pounder and Michael Chiklis had actual recognition at that time, and it wasn't really for much. CCH Pounder, you might remember her from shows like ER and Cop Rock. And Michael Chiklis, of course, was the happy-go-lucky commish and Daddy-O, NBC show Daddy-O. So, as I mentioned earlier, back then, 20 years ago, if you ended up on a TV show, it was pretty much a death sentence for your career if you had started in movies and ended up on TV. Quite different from how it is now. But this show kind of changed all that, and it began when Carl Weathers appeared as Vic's old training officer / partner, Joe Clark, in Season 2.
Looks like a touch of my last lesson, huh?
So with ratings on the slight decline after Season 3, the producers decided to take a chance and go out and bring in a big-name actress to try to revitalize the show a little bit. And it could have been a disaster, because who they went and got was Oscar-winning actress Glenn Close. And instead of the show taking a complete nosedive, she completely revitalized it, bringing her grace and power as an actress to take over as Captain Monica Rawling in Season 4.
One happy family, huh? Oh, yeah. You hit the jackpot.
Comedian Anthony Anderson also joined the show in Season 4 as the criminal mastermind and tactician Antoine Mitchell. And I think Anthony Anderson's portrayal of Antoine Mitchell to this day might be the scariest and most notorious villain in all 7 seasons of The Shield. He was just outstanding.
And I guess the police, they need us too. You put more than 2 black men together and look who shows up. Hey, but you know what? It's our own fault because we commit the crime. And then when she threatened to tell your boss...
No!
But according to Sean Ryan, the show hit its all-time high point in Season 5 when Forrest Whitaker joined the show as terrifying Internal Affairs Department Detective John Kavanaugh, whose goal was not only to investigate Vic Mackey, but to topple the entire strike team.
No. Hey, get off me, man. Hey, get your hands off him. You touch me, you're gonna go to jail cell next to him. Hey, Curtis! Don't be stupid, Curtis! You give me your badge and your gun. Captain Billings, you take his badge and you take his gun now! Now!
As you can see from that clip, Forrest Whitaker took the show to all new emotional levels. In the show, Season 5 was unforgettable for so many reasons that I'm not even going to get into because I want you guys to watch it. Season 6 brought Franca Potente from Run Lola Run and the Bourne films to the show.
I'm not going to let everything my father spent a lifetime building get picked apart by snakes and vultures who see a weakness.
Seems like you already got people in the organization freelancing behind your back.
And for all you eagle-eyed MCU fans out there, you'll see a young Brock Rumlow himself, Frank Grillo, as Officer Paul Jackson.
You know, I think the question here is, if Julian's lying about this, then what else is Julian lying about?
Also, MCU Ant-Man's best pal Luis Michael Pena as Shane's new partner in Season 4, Armando Army Renta.
I mean, we're gonna beat this thing based off the tips of a goddamn locksmith?
Smitty was Army intelligence for 12 years before he got into Keys.
Dude, I was in the service. AI just means he was carrying extra batteries for the field radio.
And not to be left out, Shields, but not the Shield. It's Agents of Shield / Shield from the MCU's Agent Phil Coulson, Clark Gregg, was featured in Season 3.
Why old ladies, Will?
You think I resented my mother or something? You're digging the wrong hole.
Point me to the right one.
Maybe I picked them because they were old and they couldn't fight back. You ever think about that?
The show also garnered so much praise that well-known directors took a swing at a couple episodes themselves. Directors such as John Badham, Frank Darabont, and turning in what might be one of the best episodes of the entire series and also featuring his wife, Rebecca Pidgeon, David Mamet. I'd also like to point out that the show didn't have an official soundtrack. Yes, there is musical accompaniment, and there is a soundtrack album called Soundtrack Music from the Streets. It was available on CD. You can find it on eBay now or in secondary markets, or you could just download it digitally still. But basically they used like ambient sound from radios or cars or whatever. You know, if they were going by a shop, there would be music coming from the store. That was basically the soundtrack, aside from the pilot, which did have a couple of actual composed pieces for the show. The only other compositions written specifically for the show were the S.H.I.E.L.D. theme by Vivian Ann Romero, Ernesto J. Bautista, and Rodney Alejandro called Just Another Day. And there was the little, the recap music. Every week they had the previously on the S.H.I.E.L.D., and they'd have the little music tags underneath. And that was also soundtracked. But other than that, they used popular music from all different genres to enhance the realistic feel of the show. You can see in the clip I played from Forrest Whitaker, you know, all you hear is like police radios and phones ringing and things like that. There was no dramatic score to try to heighten your emotional reaction to things. It was the acting carried the show. You believe me, there's enough emotional reaction in there. You didn't need music to help guide you along. And that's what made the show really, really special to me. It was just something so different, so out of left field at the time.
How's the victim?
Paramedic says he's swirling down the drain.
Who said that, Randy?
Yeah.
It sounds like Randy, cynical bastard.
I just want to make a quick mention as well. This show is 20 years old today, March 12th. And when you go back and think about it, when we're in this era of hyperbolic identity politics and this idea of representation in just about everything that comes out of Hollywood, let's go back 20 years and let's take a look at what this show did. We have Julian, who is a person of color and has another trait that I'm not going to spoil for you. Danny, woman cop who's in charge of her unit. Then, you know, we have Dutch, of course. Claudette, a woman, person of color, who is the head detective. David Acevedo, a Latino, who's in charge of the entire precinct. Then we got, of course, the strike team. But then we have Tina, who's a Latina officer. And we have Tavon, who is a person of color detective. So, yeah, they hit all the boxes. So, you know, this whole idea that we've been non-diverse and we're not representing properly up until 2015, apparently, is totally wrong, because you see it right there. I think the difference with the S.H.I.E.L.D. is it didn't pander and it wasn't tokenization. It took all of those characters and it threw them in a blender and treated every single one of them equally, just like the real world would. And that's the difference. You can have your diversity, you can have your representation, and you can do it properly without pandering and without putting it in front of the content. The content has to come first, and the S.H.I.E.L.D. was fearless in that approach. And that is what sets it apart from anything you'll see today. That's why this show would never play now.
Oh, this is going to be the one, Tavon. I can feel it.
Me too.
And I have to say that a lot of shows have their ups and downs. I love Star Trek. Star Trek is my favorite show. But Star Trek's got its share of clunker episodes. You know, I'll be critical where need be. Not all of them are good. But the S.H.I.E.L.D. never had a letdown. They were like the athlete that came to play every minute of every game. The first 5 episodes in season 1 might look slow compared to the rest of the run, but that's only because in the pilot they drop you into this fully formed world. And then they spend the next couple episodes kind of fleshing out that world, getting you more immersed in that world. And then you're off and running, and it goes 100 miles an hour for the next 83 episodes. It's got gritty realism. Every single scene doesn't come up for air. There's no time to breathe. Like I said earlier, the pace is relentless. There are so many things that occur in the span of an episode that you sometimes can't remember where it began and ended, because it is serialized, so they all kind of start to blend together. It was just I got to say, a remarkable achievement and it changed television forever. So please, if you haven't seen The Shield, sit down, give it a watch. You won't be disappointed. So today, March 12th, 2022, we raise a glass to Sean Ryan and television history.
Hey, get him up, Hey, come on.
So in closing, just want to say that FX took a chance on this fledgling cop show, and look what it turned into. The shows that they're known for now go on and on and on. Some of them are just amazing. Some of my favorites are Justified, Fargo, Archer, of course, Taboo, Sons of Anarchy was huge, Rescue Me. Just became a destination, a place to go to watch some really, really high-quality television. There's only one book out about The Shield. It covers the first 2 seasons. It's called Notes from the Barn by David Jacobs. What I'm disappointed in, I got the book back when it came out. It's not a behind-the-scenes book at all. It's actually like an account as if The Shield were real and these people were real. So it's like all these dossier files and whatnot. But you know what? If you can find it in secondary markets, it might be worth adding to your collection if you're a fan of the show. And I can't recommend this enough. I got the original 7 DVD sets, the first 5 that were put out by 20th Century Fox, the last 2 by Sony. But this Mill Creek Entertainment put out this Blu-ray edition a couple years ago, and the transfers are absolutely stunning. Just stunning. It comes in this flip-out book style, and each disc is in its own page of this book. It's just absolutely amazing. So it's never looked better. I highly recommend getting this Blu-ray set if you can before it's out of print. And yeah, so thanks for watching. Again, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into what I feel is probably the greatest television show ever, not just for its content, but for its place in history, in television history. And all this stuff now you're seeing on the streaming networks and whatnot, all are because of this. So with that, I'll leave it to Captain David Aceveda.
Any questions?
If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up below. Also, please subscribe to GeekTime TV. It really helps us grow the channel. And make sure you hit that bell icon in order to receive notifications every time we drop new content here. You can also check us out on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at GeekTimeNet. Thanks again for watching. We will see you soon.
Say, kids, what time is that?